Hello and welcome to the PrayFull Podcast. I'm your host, Pastor Jeff, and in today's episode, we continue with excerpts from a message entitled, A Wealthy Place. If you haven't listened to the previous parts, I would encourage you to go back to episode 22 and begin listening to those and enjoy this message from its beginning. You see, anything that truly worships and serves God will be costly. It was costly for Jesus to fulfill his Father's will. It cost him his life. Are we willing to consider the cost to enter into this wealthy place? Hang around until the end, and I'll be back with some important info. I hope you enjoy this.
Oh man, I'm telling you, we go from John 9. You get to John 11, and one of Jesus' so-called best friends is on his deathbed. You know the story. I said, you know the story. And John, when he's writing, in John chapter number 11, where it begins, he says, now, he said, over there at the house of Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, and he throws in parentheses in the first couple of verses of John 11, he says, this was the Mary that anointed the feet of Jesus. He's not saying it had already taken place. He is writing from a place past all of these events, and he's writing saying, now as I'm telling this story, don't miss this, there are no accidents. He says, when you read this account, I want you to keep in light and bear in mind that the Mary in this story is the Mary that in chapter 12 is going to anoint the feet of Jesus, and she's going to worship like she's never worshiped before. Y'all with me? You got to see it that way. So Jesus says to the messengers that came, hey, Lazarus whom you love is at the point of death. And then the Bible said that Jesus, when he had heard he was sick, he abode 2 more days where he was. Jesus purposefully did not go to him. We know that. We've heard that preached. We've read it 1,000 times. But he said, but I want you to see it in this context. He says, but this sickness is not unto death. He wasn't saying that Lazarus was not going to die. He was saying the purpose and outcome of this trial. My God, you better get this. He wasn't saying, because we know Lazarus died for a little bit. He got called back, but we know he died. Jesus was not saying Lazarus is not going to die. He was saying the eternal purpose of your trial is not your death. The purpose of the trial you're in right now is not for your destruction. It's for the glory of God, he said. It's for the glory of God. Oh, I don't know. I'm in despair. This thing's it's over. It's about got the best of my nerves. I don't know if I can go on any further. I'm just reminding you that it is not the will of God that this destroy you, but rather that God pull that worship out of your life, that he receives the glory that is due his name. You say, I don't know how any good can come out of this. They didn't think any good could come out of Nazareth either, but the Lord of glory came out of Nazareth. The Savior of humanity came out of Nazareth. And you may not think anything good can come out of this, but it's not for your destruction. It's for his glory. It's for his glory. And so you know what happens. Jesus finally gets his junk together, moseys out to the donkey, rides on. He didn't actually, they walked, but anyway. He got there. What did Martha say? What's the first thing she said? You know, if you had been here, he wouldn't have died. But how many of you know God doesn't work on our desires. He works on His. Lord, if you'd actually showed up, this wouldn't be happening. Lord, if you were faithful to your word, I wouldn't be going through this awful mess. I wouldn't be facing this trial. I wouldn't be fighting the way I am. Lord, if you had been here, the purpose you had for my life would not be realized. Jesus never wanted to heal Lazarus. He wanted to resurrect him. They already knew Jesus was a healer. That was a well-established thing to those that knew him and were around him. What most of that crowd, some of them did, but most of that crowd didn't know him as, is the resurrection. Among the many lessons he was telling them, that grave over there does not have the authority over me. We can fear sickness, we can fear COVID, we can fear tomorrow, we can fear a whole lot of stuff, but you got to know that Jesus is laying his finger on whatever you're afraid of and is saying, that does not have authority over me. I may have caused you, I may have allowed you to go through the fire. I may have caused people to ride over and just trample over you. I may have allowed you to stumble into the net. I may have proved you and tried you as a refiner does with silver. But I'm here to tell you, I was just bringing you to a wealthy place. So in John 11, he says, well, this isn't to death. This is for the glory of God. He dies. And at first, it makes Jesus look like a liar. He gets there. Martha said, well, the little bit of faith I got left, I'm going to say, if you'd have been here, this wouldn't have happened. Now, Jesus doesn't utter these words, but in between the lines, you can pick the spirit of it up, and he is basically saying, well, I chose not to be here. There's a reason I wasn't here. So Martha goes through this. Yes, I believe he'll come. No, I'm the resurrection of the life, all that. She calls Mary. Mary jumps up, runs out there, and the first thing she says, what? Come on, you know that. You know the statement. Guys, when your wife says, now where have you been? What took you so long to get home? If you had been here, he wouldn't be dead. He says, well, take me to him. They go to the grave. Get that stone out of there. Come on now. Oh, no, Lord, this is getting weird. The visitation is over. The funeral's been had. There's no viewing the body now. Nature is taking course. He stinks. That's where a lot of us are. That's where you find yourself. You're like, this situation just pure stinks. I don't want to be here. I shouldn't be here. If God loved me, I wouldn't be here. I don't understand what's happening, and this situation just pure stinks, and I just don't know why I'm here. Jesus said, get that stone out of there. No, this mess is beyond that. I'm not doing anything radical. I'm tired of trusting. I'm tired of believing God's going to come through at the last minute, and then it doesn't seem like he does, and this and that. No. They said, roll that stone away. Come on now. He raises him from the dead. But for the sake of this sermon, that's not the climax of this story. He calls Lazarus out of the grave. He comes out. In chapter 12, we learn the truth of what Jesus was doing. Part of it, at least. I won't attempt to say I've got a hold on all of that. In chapter 12, it says they were at their house. Mary was serving. Lazarus is sitting at the table. But who else shows up? Come on, who's the third person there? That's Mary. Mary comes and she has some perfume, some Very costly. I highlighted that in my Bible this morning. Those two words I did not have specifically highlighted in that statement, or in that passage, but in John 12 it says Mary came with her ointment, with that perfume, and it says, and it was very costly. She opened it and she spent it all to worship Jesus. I'm talking about a wealthy place. I'm not talking about a place where your bank account is running over. I'm not talking about a place to where your garage is overflowing with every kind of vehicle you like to have. I'm not talking about a place where the home is bigger than you could imagine. That's not what I'm talking about. The wealthy place I'm talking about is a place that holds wealth of heaven. When that humble girl Mary, remember John started the chapter about the resurrection of Lazarus by saying it was that Mary. It was that Mary that worshiped and poured the ointment and did this, that. He starts out by that. And then in the next chapter, even though he didn't write it in chapter and verse context that way, he just wrote it just straight through. After the resurrection of Lazarus, the first thing he comes back to is they're in the house and Mary comes to worship.
What'd she say?
And it was very costly. So, Pastor, you're saying I've got to have something really expensive to worship the Lord with, to give Him, to put Him. No, you're missing it.
That's right.
Jesus did not care about the perfume. He cared about the heart that sacrificed the perfume.
Yeah, Lord.
He cared about Mary, who, don't miss this, Mary had the harder time getting out of the house to go see Jesus. I've told you we criticize Martha for serving and not sitting at the feet of Jesus, but before that, she's the first one to meet Jesus coming up the road and say, Lord, this is what's happened. I wish you'd have been here. And she worshiped the Lord in her own way. She didn't run out there necessarily bitter. She just was there. But the Bible said Mary sat still in the house. You know what that's telling me? That's telling me that as they go through the trial of watching their brother sick and dying, and Jesus, who has said He loves them, and who has said He is their friend, and said that He is the Son of Man, and He has come to seek and to save the lost, and He heals everybody else. Why didn't He heal my brother? And Martha runs right out there when she hears Jesus is coming, but it says Mary sat still in the house. Mary, I believe with all of my heart, Mary was struggling with this trial way more than Martha was. She didn't get up and go until somebody said, hey, Jesus is specifically calling for you. She got up and she went. But at first it was too bitter. This trial is too hard. I don't know if I can look at Jesus right now. I know He could have changed this. I know that He could have turned this around. I know this could be different. But fast forward to chapter 12, and she's the one that went into her treasury, pulled out the only thing she had of any value, and she broke it open, and she worshiped the Lord. And it was very costly. I just come by to tell you that whatever you're facing, whatever trial and suffering you're going through, I've come by to tell you that God is leading you to a wealthy place. You see, because the Bible says in the Old Testament that they were not to come to the house of God empty. That doesn't mean that you're to come with your millions to put in the bag, or you're to do this, that, not in any way, shape, form, or fashion. No, you're to come with an experience that cost you something. That said, I'm willing to lay everything down and trust Jesus. that I'm willing to believe that everything that's happening in my life has a purpose and a reason. I'm willing to believe that my Christ is bigger than the storm that I'm facing. I'm willing to believe that even now, Jesus can do something miraculous with my life. But thou, O Lord, has brought us to a wealthy place. That word wealthy there does not just mean monetary. You know what that word means? It means a saturated place. It means a well-watered area, fertile. It means abundance. Jesus said in John 10, I've come that you might have life and have it more abundantly. Folks, I'm just telling you, we're in a world of despair. But if we could see what God is doing, if we could realize that on the other side of all of this mess, God is going to get glory out of your life and mine that He never would have otherwise. I said God is going to get some glory. Because why? He is worthy of it. I can come mechanically. And I can memorize songs, and I can sing every word, and I can learn notes on an instrument. But listen to me, you cannot fabricate real worship. You can imitate it, but you can't fabricate it. You can't just make it up. It's got to be a heart thing. God is bringing us to a wealthy place, a place to where nobody has to stand up here and say, hey, it's time to raise your hands. If you and I are going to worship God, it's got to be very costly. He said He'll give us beauty for ashes. Weeping does endure for a night. There is joy in the morning.
I hope this message truly has been a blessing to you, and if it has, please take a moment to like and subscribe, and also consider sharing it with someone you know that would benefit from it as well. You can also find more great resources over at our website at www.prayfull.com. That's Prayfull, prayfull.com. And until next time, pray full, stay full, and I'll see you then.